Welcome, everyone. And so if you've been going to conference, if you've been paying attention to social media, you've been hearing the name MakersHub. So this is an exciting reveal as far as Appy Hour is concerned, to be able to show MakersHub and the AI that is built into it. So, we've been seeing AI little modules that are in different apps, but MakersHub really is truly built differently. And that is going to be our conversation today, is how exactly does it work? What does it look like? And then I was saying earlier that I had a chance to be able to test it with a client, and oh my gosh, was it fast. So being able to read, I think, around 50 invoices in just a matter of seconds, it was very impressive. Grabbed all of the detail, and then I was able to manipulate it.
I love this because everybody's asking about, we hear AI, 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 right, in the industry, and everybody's asking, yeah, that's great. We know about ChatGPT, but like, what are some practical uses of it in our practice to actually get accounting work done? And this is a perfect example of that. So really, really thrilled for this demo today. I know a lot of people have been kind of waiting in anticipation to see this magic. So thanks so much. Carly, for joining us and sharing this with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having us, and for all the audience members for joining today. We're excited to chat with everybody and show you what we're working on, and learn from you what else you'd like us to be working on. Big element of the way we've built what we've built has been, we came to it with a hypothesis about the world based upon our own experience and how to use some of the modern tools that you're talking about to solve it. And that got us started. And from there, it's been just responding really fast and really thoughtfully to the things that our users tell us they want, or the way they want it to be different. So we learn as much from these types of engagements as we hope to share.
Well, and I can say there was one little ask that I had, and within a couple of days, you would turn that around. So definitely listening to users and incorporating that feedback. So
absolutely.
Very impressive. Well, so Heather, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I think I know just about everybody on our call today. So hey everyone. But if I don't know you, if I haven't met you yet, my name's Heather Satterlee. I'm a CPA, and I am what I call a tech tinkerer. I love automation, love accounting apps, and my most recent role is Director of Education and Media at Woodard, where I am responsible for putting together the educational track at the Scaling Heights Conference, and I'm also the senior editor of the Woodard Report. So I definitely have my finger on the pulse of all things accounting, automation, and changes in the accounting industry. So super excited to be with everybody today, and excited for this demo.
Me too. So my name is Liz Scott, and I still have got a small little accounting firm, and we get to play. And in that playground, it allows me to have a chance to test apps like MakersHub, and then be able to kind of get a feel for what is that like inside of the accounting space and with clients. So that's a very cool thing to get to do. And then the other part of my day is spent designing training for our technology partners. And I enjoy that because most of our peers are saying, just show me how to do it. So that is part of what we get to do, is design those how-to tutorials so that way they can be passed along to new users. Charlie, would you like to introduce yourself as the president and co-founder of MakersHub?
Sure, and I'll probably spend more time introducing my co-founder who's not here. His background is much more, relevant to why we're building what we're building. But I spent 18 years in the banking industry and the finance industry, so I come from more of a banking and capital markets and finance background than a technology one. But in the kind of latter half of my career, I worked at Citibank. I spent a lot of time at Citi Ventures investing in companies that were doing things in the periphery of what we're doing now. So a lot of payments companies and a lot of financial technology companies. And my partner, whom I met, we both, while still working full-time, went back to school, and we met while at school getting our MBAs, while still, both in our proverbial day jobs. Ran an advanced manufacturing company, and his name's Fong No, and he's a brilliant technologist and an engineer. He comes from a proper engineering background, an electrical engineering background. He ran a manufacturing company, and they built really sophisticated machines that fabricated glass. So an interesting tidbit about him: if you've ever flown on a Boeing Dreamliner and pressed the button that makes the glass auto dim, he invented the machine that fabricates that glass and makes that technology possible. So very smart guy. And ironically, when we decided to found this business, his feeling about why he wasn't able to scale his business to the level that he thought their technological and engineering capabilities should have allowed them to were really back office and accounting driven. And so they built these enormous machines that were 10 or 20,000 parts. And he was in a constant morass of trying to understand the cost inputs of those machines, and then to use that data to price future work or to optimize their cost inputs and the cost structure of their business. He could never do it. He could never get ahead of it. He could never feel like he was in a place where he was driving from a spot of any kind of visibility. And when he reduced that question as to why, it really boiled down to he didn't have a technological tool that allowed him to understand in a granular way what they'd bought and what they spent money on. And that was really done, or should have been done, in his view, in the AP process. At the end of the day, you could have a very hygienic purchase order process or a really hygienic engineering process, but what matters is what you got billed and what you paid. And did you account for that stuff properly? And did you have an accounting setup that allowed you, if you were accounting for it properly, to derive insights and understanding from it? And so we built a tool that you'll see here today to effectively do that. And that was, kind of the initial hypothesis, like I spoke about earlier. Hey, there are a lot of people out there who, when they get a bill, the jobs to be done extend way beyond just needing to pay that bill. And there's a ton of prepayment process and work that goes into that. And that's really what we've focused on. And every day we're surprised by somebody from a different industry, or an accountant or CPA or bookkeeper, who has a customer from an industry that we just never thought we would serve, or that we never thought would have this need. And it's turned out to just be much, much more fundamental across industries and across segments and across business types and business sizes than we ever imagined.
I love that. And it's incredible how much value accounting professionals can bring to their clients by stepping into that role of the expense and the accounts payable management, that controllership service, where I know for myself, my firm found tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars just by working with our clients and reviewing invoices and making sure that they were not paying too early without taking a discount, or making sure that the invoice is actually tied out to what they should be paying. It's incredible, and that just really brings finite or very definitive value to a client, because you can quantify it. You can actually put a dollar value on the value that you're bringing to the client, which speaks volumes for the relationship with your client.
Yeah. And without going down too much of a, premature rabbit hole, we started obviously by saying, okay, Fong, my partner, comes from a manufacturing background. We know that people in businesses that look like his have this same problem. Perhaps more importantly, we know who those people are and how to speak to them and the types of concerns that they would have. So we started the company by saying, we'll develop it and sell it to that type of company and company direct. And we found out very, very quickly that in the vast majority of cases, the value really accrues to the CPA and bookkeeping firm, because so often those businesses, they don't sit with that challenge very long. They say, I am aware that I have a problem. It's an exceptionally painful problem, and it's not something that I can just tolerate. It's something that has to be solved. This is a critical job to be done. So I'm going to outsource that job, and it gets outsourced to a CPA or a bookkeeper or an accounting firm. And you guys would know far better than we, but our experience has been that many, many CPA and bookkeeping firms at some point in their past have tried to do this as a service, have tried to do AP for exactly the reasons that you talk about, Heather. It's very value added. It's really attractive in the standpoint of it's recurring and it's evergreen. It's not seasonal. This is something that if you have this problem, you have this problem every day. And so it's not like it takes a vacation, right? You're getting billed all the time. And so with that, we've heard so many stories of people who tried to do it, but just couldn't figure out a way to do it cost effectively, because it is a really hard problem. And it's a really, before us, not to sound egomaniacal, but before us, it was a really manual problem. And there wasn't an option other than putting more resource hours at it. So people were kind of upside down in terms of it being, yes, this is a theoretically attractive piece of work to take on, but I can't make it work from an economically sensible way for my firm. And this is the sort of thing that we're able to add a tremendous amount of leverage to. And we've had have a ton of CPA partners now who are in the process of basically starting from scratch and building really large and material AP practices, because they can now do it in a cost-effective way. They can charge a lot because it's a painful problem that customers need solved, and I can do it effectively because it automates things and automates it smartly.
Mhm. And you know, a lot of clients, they want to know, can they get those discounts that if they early pay? And most of the time, that's something that's hard to jump in front of. But one of the things that's really cool about MakersHub is it can read that invoice or bill and look at what are those terms, and it can calculate it within just a matter of seconds and be able to tell you, if you pay within this time frame, you get to save this much money. And those are the kinds of things that whenever you're thinking about cash flow management and you're thinking about ways to save money, that stacks up really fast. There's a lot of
Yeah.
control that you've got built into the system that's just part of MakersHub.
Yeah, and that's a huge one. You know, it's a great example of, we can read and understand anything that's on the bill. And so our users can tell us, you know, we obviously know and we map to all of the endpoints in QuickBooks as things that people care about and care about understanding and wanting context and structure for it from these flat file bills that they get. So we can read and understand just about anything. One great example of that is net term discounts, like you mentioned, Liz, where, you know, there's a bunch of challenges and there's a bunch of very good explanations for why people, you know, technology providers haven't been able to do that previously, and how modern technology has allowed us to. So, you know, we can talk about it when, and I'll actually show it to you later, but basically we've taken some of these AI approaches to say, okay, the first thing that we need to do is we need to take this document, and as far as a computer is concerned, a computer is dumb, you know, bunny ears dumb, but it can take characters and it can take images. And as long as you can index or start to put some structure and sense around it, then you can use these large language models that you've probably heard a lot about, that are ChatGPT like, to say, I want to understand. I've now read that and I can tell that this thing, this mass of characters, is something that somebody cares about, but now how do I understand it? And so we built a language model to say, find the net term. First, use the computer vision models that we have to find and locate that net term when it's there, and now use a language model to understand it. And now that we can understand it, apply it to the bill, or make it an option to apply it to the bill. So, you know, net terms are a great example. They're written a litany of different ways and kind of wacky, you know, net 30 prox 10 sept, like all this wacky stuff that it comes across. And if you're going to do that yourself, certainly on a conceptual level, nobody wants to pay more than they have to. If they are not opting to, right? Sometimes it's a cash flow decision and I want the extra time, but if I don't have to pay more and I've got the cash, why wouldn't I? But it's really operationally like heavy to do that. What if it's $100 and you save $2 for spending on net 10? Like, it's very hard to justify that in that specific moment, but spread out across the course of all of the stuff that you buy across the course of the year, that's really meaningful. And it's the sort of thing that, you know, Liz at Accounting Lifeline can say at the end of 6 months, you know, look how much I saved you that you otherwise wouldn't have captured. So it's a great example.
It's an easy way to also quantify the work too. So very exciting. And Ted, welcome to the conversation.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I am going to be quiet for most of this, believe it or not, and I have to sit on my hands and zip my lips to actually be quiet. But I will be here to answer any questions. I don't know if we'll do the slideshow, Charlie, or just run straight into the demo. But it may make sense to just go straight in instead of running our slideshow after this. So I'll leave that up to you. Thanks, everyone. I am here though to answer any questions as Charlie goes through this, because I'm sure you'll have a few.
And we'll have the slides up on our website by the end of the day tomorrow. So if anybody wants to look at the slides, they will be available for download.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that fits like a glove. I hate speaking to slide presentations, and I don't want to bore anybody to tears at slide presentations, so happy to skip that. But really, I think the point of the slides, if anything, other than just introducing the company and who we are, is a couple-fold. We've built ourselves with a couple like core tenets that you'll see, and the first is the what we call wise vision technology. So our ability to look at a document, to read a document and understand it and give it context. And when we started building the company and started kind of examining why a lot of the ecosystem tools that are out there, because there are a ton, there's a lot of AP tools out there. And when we started to look at, hey, why have these tools that have been around a long time and raised a lot of money or public companies, like, why don't they do this very well? It's not a secret that people would like this to work better. It's not just an insight that somebody didn't have. It was because they used almost exclusively one of a couple third-party, what are called OCR tools. So the technology that allows a computer to try to read a document. And the problem with those tools is that they try to do their OCR reading for a huge assortment of documents. So they're trying to read loan documents and bank statements and invoices and mortgage docs and all sorts of different stuff. And the net effect of it is they can't do any of them particularly well. So they're all pretty limited. And when you see that play out in some of the tools that people on the phone have probably used, it's okay, like you read a vendor, you read the total, but very thin in terms of what you could read. So we've built this exclusively for that tool. And the other piece is we've tried to be very, very conscientious and put at the absolute forefront the integration, because at the end of the day, what matters is what ends up in QuickBooks and the accounting ledger. And so unreliable and superficial integrations are a bane of this, third-party app ecosystem. I would argue Liz and Heather probably have, more authority on that topic than I do, but that's our opinion. And so we've built it with a tremendous amount of depth and tremendous amount of reliability. So I will dive in and we can talk about some of this stuff as we go. I'm going to stop your sharing. And the first thing, and then I'll switch over to the actual tool. But before I do, I just want to go through a couple example invoices that I pulled to do and use today. And we can talk about why this is hard, or a couple examples of why this is hard. So this is an invoice, and all of these are real. These are all from customers. We've kind of scrubbed them and everything, but they're all real. So this is an example of an invoice that on its face, this looks pretty well structured. It's, fairly straightforward. It's typed, it's kind of laid out well, but this is a good example of something, if you cared about a lot of information, I want the SKU number, I want the description. So what is it that we actually buy? I want the unit price, I want the total price, and maybe I want to be able to strip out tax or something. This is very, very hard for a computer, because this kind of massive text over here includes the SKU number, EFB 24-SR, and then the description all kind of in one. So how does a computer know, hey, this is what one thing is, and this is where the SKU number starts and ends, and this is where the description, how do you make sense of that? The answer is you can't using OCR, but you can using tools like what people refer to as ChatGPT, but we don't actually use ChatGPT, but those large language models where we say, okay, we can identify what this is, and we can identify what the constituent parts of this likely are, and we can give that model a bunch of examples of what it should look like. Here's what a SKU number would look like, and here's what a description would look like, and help us break out which is which. And it works really well. And then we can say, okay, hey, you have a bunch of options, computer, to try to guess which is the price that I care about. How do you really know? Do I care about this list price? Do I care about this multiplier, whatever that is, the net price, the total price, right? It's got a lot of options. And so in training MakersHub and training it on the millions of documents that we've had, our model has learned to reconcile these. And so you don't have to. But good example of something that looks fairly straightforward, but there's actually a tremendous amount of complexity for a computer to read this. And then there's examples like this that some of you have probably seen, where it's just, hey, a customer sat down and took a stack of receipts and bills that, hey, this is why I pay Liz and Heather, so you guys are just going to deal with this. And here's one PDF, but this is 8 documents, and it's got crumpled upside down. I can't even read it. You know, a mix of receipts. There's, oh, here's a handwritten one. Great. You know, here's an actual like physical receipt. And how does a system, first of all, just read any of this, let alone be able to break it apart into its constituent parts? Third example, okay, I'm a construction company, a big one, and I buy a ton of stuff at Home Depot, and Home Depot bills me once a month or once every 2 weeks. And so I get this PDF, single PDF again, that is, in this case, this is 68 documents. It's 63 bills and 5 credits. It's all just jumbled here. Well, great, this is all fairly straightforward if you sit down and look at this, but what if this was your job? What if I, as the customer, said, hey, I want all this line item data and I want you to enter 68 bills? How could you possibly do this in a way that's cost effective? You just simply couldn't. Or what if you were the end customer and this was just your job? I mean, this is the sort of thing that when people talk about AI taking away jobs, that's something that we're very sensitive to. But the reality for us is nobody wants to do this job. Everyone has something better to do with their time than this. And then there are just examples where it's just like, I've looked at this bill probably 1,000 times. I still, and this is the 1,000th and first, I have no idea what's going on here. I simply don't. And every time I get to the stage of trying to understand it, my brain kind of glosses over and I move on to my email, which I just did sitting here even on this demo, because my brain can't deal with this. So all of these examples, I'm going to show you how MakersHub handles. And I loaded them in before we sat down today, rather than have you watch the system process it. But all of this would have taken 5-10 seconds, maybe a minute for that Home Depot bill, and Liz can attest to that, having done it herself. But MakersHub is a full suite A to Z platform that is meant not only to deal with these complexities, because most platforms don't get past this. Okay, how do you get to the stage of being able to code these properly, being able to have some approval routing intelligence around this if you can't read and understand it? So the first piece is we need to read and understand what the bills are, but then you ultimately want to do those series of jobs. And those series of jobs are, I want them coded and I want them approved by the right people. I want them authorized for payment by the right people. I want them to sync to the accounting platform, and I want to get them paid in a way that allows me to see and have transparency. So it's important that we have the full kind of A to Z, which we do. And what you see, and I'll just walk you through how transaction would work in the platform using some of these as examples. But what you see on the screen right now, are you guys looking at the MakersHub screen now, Ted? Did I navigate my share screen effectively? Great. So this is just a summary dashboard of, hey, since we're an A to Z platform, where do you have what documents in what phase of the AP process? And so we delineate between bills and receipts. Bills are, I have a bill, that obviously needs to get paid to the vendor. And then I have a receipt where somebody went to Home Depot with a corporate credit card. I want that economic record to get into QuickBooks. And I want it to get into QuickBooks with a couple things that aren't possible if I just pull it in from the expense feed. I want some kind of oversight. Just because the money's been spent doesn't mean that I don't want anybody to look at it. I also want to know what was bought, and I want to account for the stuff that was bought. And then once bills have been reviewed and approved, they go into the payables, and now there is these bills to be paid, which is somebody hasn't gone in. These are valid, but nobody has gone in to schedule them for payment, or there are payments that have been scheduled out into the future. And when we go into the financials tab, and holler if you can't see this well, but here's basically the inbox. And so any bills that are in your inbox awaiting your review would be found here. And bills can get here one of a number of ways. You can upload documents directly, just drag and drop them directly in, but the vast majority of our users are entirely email based, and you get a personalized bespoke email that anybody can interact with. So a vendor can build this, a auto forwarding rule can be set up from an existing APM box, et cetera, and we're just going to route them appropriately for your review. And so if we look at some of these bills, you can start to see wow, we can read and understand and give the proper structure to a lot. So here's that first Belimo bill that we looked at. And as you can see, if you care about itemization and inventory control or things like that, we could recognize, hey, here was the SKU, here was the description, the appropriate quantity, the appropriate pricing, et cetera. But before we get to that, if we kind of start in the upper left-hand corner of the right-hand panel, and we'll just kind of work around and orient you, you'll see that we read the vendor as this thing, because this is the first time we've seen it, and that's what the vendor name is. And at this stage, we've integrated with QuickBooks, and we've ingested all the AP relevant data from QuickBooks. So vendor list, item list, chart of accounts, customer project list, et cetera. And now you can make flexible reference to that when you go through the bill review phase. And so what this says is, hey, you don't have a vendor, this is the vendor, but you don't have a vendor called this thing. And so either that's a new vendor and you want to add it to QuickBooks, and you can do that directly from here. We pull in all the information from the bill and pre-populate this for you. Or we perform a search in your vendor list and say, you do have this vendor, and it's just a naming convention mismatch. This is most similar. And now you've taught the system. You've said, hey, by virtue of my interactions with MakersHub in my bespoke instance, not the universe of MakersHub users, but in my instance, when you encounter this name, this is my QuickBooks name that I want you to associate that to. And there's a lot of that kind of one-shot adaptive learning built into this. So AI is really good. Our models are really good. They're not always perfect, or there are certain times where there wouldn't be necessary context. And I'll show you a couple more examples of that, where just by virtue of your interaction, you teach the system. And then, as we keep moving around, we've read the invoice number, the due date, the payment terms. We'll come back to that per Liz's comments earlier, and the PO number. Using that PO number, we perform a similar search in your customer project list and say, hey, give me the options of the customers or projects who have the most similar numbering conventions to this PO number, and serve it to me as an example for who this bill might be for. And so with this, if this is the appropriate customer project, it's a single click to assign that customer to all the line items on this list. But really helpful for people who are doing job costing or things of that nature, where you really need kind of granular attribution, but you also don't want to sit on that Home Depot bill where you've got 68 bills and 1,000 line items and point click, point click, point click, point click in QuickBooks 1,000 times. So any of these are editable, and we're just going to draw again from the relevant QuickBooks field, and our two-way sync learns in real time. So you update a customer in QuickBooks, it's going to be available for you here to interact with. And then you'll also notice that, okay, we've pulled out and read and organized all these line items accurately, but they've also been set as expenses and assigned to the COGS account. No accounting class has been assigned, and they're not billable. And the shipping has been assigned to the shipping item. So how did the system know to do that? And it did it using what we call our integration mapping tool. And I'll go into this in a second, but there's a couple of values, like the building blocks that need to be in place are, I got a flat file PDF document. I need something that can read it and understand it and read everything, not just a handful of things, because there's a lot that I want to do with this bill or need to do with this bill. So first of all, give it structure. And then once we've given it structure using the models that we've talked about, now, how do I make it useful? And this is really what Heather was talking about earlier. It's one thing to be able to to do that, to read a document, to give it structure. It's, okay, that's great, but how do you make it useful for me? And this is one example of how we've made it useful, where, okay, my job, or part of, my client's job, is to attribute all this stuff in a really granular way. And that gets annoying. It's repetitive. So there is a logic that underlies why, when we buy something, we account for it in a certain way. And what this tool does is it allows you to capture that logic, and then the system will follow it. So without going into a ton of detail here, I'll just kind of orient you as to how this works. But there are 4 tabs, and basically each tab answers a different series of questions for how are we going to code the stuff on this bill. So first, I have a bill. This bill has a bunch of line items. Am I treating those line items as items or categories? Am I expensing it, or am I itemizing this stuff, and why? So when it comes from a certain vendor, or it has a certain item number, or it has a certain description, we treat those as category details. Or when it comes from this set of vendors, we treat that stuff as things that we want to itemize. And so you can basically build out this logic. And it's not a scenario where this all needs to be done before you can sit down and start benefiting from MakersHub. People usually do this iteratively over time. Hey, I've got these 3 vendors. I order from them all the time. I'm always coding them the same way. I'm just going to put in basic rule system. So the way that this works is really simple. It's if this thing, then this thing, unless this next thing. And we'll keep looking for the rule that applies. So if match all, set as a category detail. Assume everything's a category detail unless the vendor name is Scott Electric. We itemize the stuff we buy from Scott Electric, and we itemize it in the miscellaneous electrical bucket. Or unless the description of the thing that we bought says shipping, we categorize shipping and we itemize shipping separately, and we do it in the shipping bucket. So put it there. And then this can get really, really granular if you need it to. So we have some really big companies that do a huge amount of inventory. And a big challenge for them is, before they can even account for the thing that they bought, that thing needs to be an item in QuickBooks. I need to go create it before I can account for it. So when we've determined that it's an item, but we recognize it's a new item, so it's not one that exists in your QuickBooks, we'll create it for you, and we'll create it for you in the right place. Again, by that same set of features based upon where you bought it from, or what it is, or what the PO number was. Or if it's a category detail, where should we put it? Where are we categorizing it? Based upon the set of factors that we read and understand from the bill. And then the same thing for assigning accounting classes or customer projects or making things billable, et cetera. So I can keep blathering on, and I will, but why don't I just take a quick second, Heather, Liz, if you have any questions, or anybody from the audience has questions, or I'll keep powering through.
You are doing great. You're spot on with the questions that are coming in here. You couldn't have timed that better.
Great.
So we were having questions that was asking about the account mapping, and I was saying that I had a bill where I needed both. I needed to be able to map some of the lines to an expense account, and then some of them I needed to be able to map to an inventory item. And I was able to use that mapping that you were showing to do exactly that, to teach the system.
Yeah, so it's line item by line item and rule by rule, and we'll help you kind of understand the intuition of how you set that up. But it is really quite straightforward. But the power of it is it can be different in every case, and this can capture that difference in every case. So it is not one of these like very kind of, again, I don't mean to use this term, but like kind of dumb rule engines where, okay, if this thing, then it has to be this thing, but that doesn't really help because, when I'm ordering from this vendor, sometimes I'm expensing, sometimes I'm itemizing, I'm doing a bunch of different things. And so that is the power of being able to understand so much information from the bill, right? Whatever it is on the bill that would tell you, the accounting professional, the way that it should be categorized or the way that it should be accounted for is available to us as well. And so you just tell us, hey, here's what I would look for, and here's what would make, here's what I would use to make the determination, and you just do it for me.
And I would say that like any app, that the learning is in the beginning, and then once you start to understand, then it becomes that second nature. And you, like all of what you were saying, Charles, is that you would go in, Charlie, and you would go in and you would map individual vendors with the expenses and the items as necessary. And then what I was able to see is even on the bill itself, that interpretation, if I needed to change a particular account, I still could, So even though I had set the mapping
Yeah.
to learn one particular behavior, I still have another chance to be able to update it here.
Absolutely. And so this is only really like a preset. Like what we want is the bill review process. We definitely are not trying to encourage anybody to not have a review process. But what we're trying to do, and you'll see why in a second, but what we're trying to do is make the bill review process a review process, not a data entry process. And so all of this can be changed. So let's say I didn't even set this, and we made it so it can be just done in really kind of bulk action. So let's just assume that this account was like it wasn't populated because I didn't set up a rule for it, but I know that it goes to this account. Well, I can just assign it to the first one and copy it all the way down, and you're on to the next. So it's like, you can do this really fast on your own. That mapping is just a additional like set of automation to say, hey, set it up for me in this way, and then I'm going to go through and I'll make any edits that I need to. Or I don't, and I can do that at all, which some of our customers do too.
Just keep learning. It's so cool.
Cool. And then there's a ton of other stuff that I won't go into, but we had every possible, Liz, I think you probably had some yourself. We had every possible manifestation of ways that, hey, I need to manipulate this bill. Like I got it, but when I get it, I actually need to assign it to 3 different subsidiary companies, or I want to, I don't know, it's got 50 line items and I don't want 50 line items to go into QuickBooks. I want you to batch it by item group and then put those kind of rolled up batches into QuickBooks, or I need to apply a multiplier. So we've made it, again, like the hard challenge in this is give it structure, but once it has structure, we can do any sorts of different things to the bill. I want to split this into multiple bills. Don't make it 1 bill, make it 4 bills, and let me direct those 4 bills to 4 different franchisees or whatever. Split this into multiple item groups, apply a multiplier, add a line beneath it, add a item below it, duplicate this because I want to split this one and assign one differently. So now we've made it super easy to manipulate what's here for everybody's kind of end bespoke needs. So there's a ton more that we can talk about on that bill piece, but in the interest of kind of powering through, I'll show you one cool thing that is another example of how you train the system and how the system can get much, much smarter. So as I said, we're really good. We're not perfect. Anybody who gets on a call like this and tells you, hey, our computer product is perfect, that is a fairy tale. Ours is good, not perfect. And here's an example, and again, a real example of the way it wasn't perfect. So this vendor, and again, this is a real example that we encountered. Okay, we read the bill and we do the best that we can, but we also perform a lot of self-checks to ensure that what we've read is correct. And so here the total is $1,766. And we read that correctly. The total is accurate, but we're not going to let you approve this because something is wrong. And in this case, what's wrong is that the sum of the line items doesn't match the total. So we read these as the 3 line items. And when we sum this, it doesn't match what the total says. So there is something missing here. And you need to help us help teach the system where it's erring. And so we'll help you kind of guide you. And we'll say the difference that's missing is $203.24. And I can just see right here where there happens to be this surcharge buried here that for whatever reason we missed. I don't know why we missed it. We shouldn't have missed it, but we did miss it. And let's assume that I order from Glass and Mirror Craft all the time and they always bill me in this structure. Well, I could just add an item and I could go and put this in and I could reconcile this self, or I could add it myself, but I don't want to make this mistake ever again. So I put 2 bills from Glass and Mirror in. There's the one we were just looking at, and there's this next one. And this next one has that same problem, right? It has the exact same surcharge. It's a different amount, but it's in the same spot and it creates the same problem. So let's go back to the first bill. And what you would do in this case is you would add a line item and we'd say, okay, I know what happened. You missed that there was this surcharge here, but I always order from Glass and Mirror and I always get that surcharge and don't screw it up again. So because we read and index the entire document, you can just say you missed the surcharge. So I'm going to start typing surcharge and we'll find it and you'll say, don't miss that again. And if you wanted to, you could even map it directly to here. When I get this surcharge, I put it into this chart of account. But let's just say, don't miss the surcharge the next time, go find it. So now we've taught the system, hey, go find that surcharge. And if I approve the bill, and we'll auto load the next one, I didn't assign an account, sorry. When we auto load the next one, the system's already learned to go look for it, right? So it already found it. And so you fix that one time, and there's a bunch of options like that in MakersHub where it's like, all right, that was a 15-second fix. And now in the perpetuity of my dealing with glass and mirror, this is going to work perfectly for me. It wasn't perfect out of the gates, but it made it, I was able to make it perfect for me really fast. So now, the other big piece of this for our users is I want to use the information that I'm able to read and understand from the bill, not just to route the stuff that's on the bill to the accounting system, but I also want to route it for the right people for approval. So I am an accounting firm and I play part of a role in the approval process, but I need my end customer to participate as well. And depending upon what the end customer is buying, it's a different person at the end customer. And so using the stuff that's on the bill, like what's the total, who's the vendor, what's the item description, or things that I code into the bill. So what is the accounting class, what GL account, what customer, we can develop these really sophisticated routing rules for who needs to participate in the approval process. So this would say if the total is greater than 0, send it to the AP processors. That processor group is a user group you create where the members of that group can all take an action on behalf of that group. Unless the bill is greater than this amount, then send it to not only the processors, but also Charlie, the president. Or this can get, again, really sophisticated. So if Liz goes in and assigns the customer as these 4 customers, then include Chris, the electrical engineer, because those are his customers, right? Or accounting classes, locations, et cetera. And you can also do this in a very ad hoc way, where if I'm looking at this bill and I just know that it's Jen who needs to participate, then I can add Jen into this. We're going to timestamp all of the communications. Jen's going to get an email from me saying, hey, I need you to look at this bill. And Jen wants to respond directly from her phone. So she can look on her phone and then she can add her commentary here, and we can have a very real-time discussion basically about the bill, despite the fact that we don't sit in the same place and we don't even work at the same firm. But now let's say we're fully approved. We'll create that bill record for you in QuickBooks with all of the line item information. And now it's an account payable. And ultimately we need to pay the bills. So here, these have all been valid. We need to pay them. For Liz's, let's look at Rushco. So this is a good example. So let's look at this bill. As you can see, this bill has these terms that Liz mentioned. This is 10% if you pay in 10 days, otherwise it's net 30, right? And if we go to pay this bill, you'll notice that MakersHub has done the work for you. It's saying, hey, you're within your 10-day window. That discount is active until the 26th. I set this invoice date as today ahead of this. I'm glad I did. Liz, we didn't even schedule that. You teed that right up, so thank you. So for 10 days, if you want to pay this bill, then you can apply this discount. Once you're outside the window, you cannot. This will be grayed out. We'll let you know that it was there, but it's a single click to apply this, and we're going to take that discount. So here's the discount that was applied. We're going to change the payment date to the 26th, pay on the last date where this window is open, and we're going to create that discount line item for you in QuickBooks. And all you did was click apply or remove, right? So I just saved my customer $172 with a single click that took a fraction of a second. Right? And you could track that and say, I mean, they don't need to know that it was that easy for you. But at the end of the day, you can go to them and say, hey, it's really great that you chose to work with Accounting Lifeline because I just saved you tens of thousands of dollars.
That is really cool.
Hey, Charlie, I have 2 questions. We have 2 questions.
Yeah.
Can you show, it looks like you have Intuit open there, or I'm not sure if you have QuickBooks open. Can you show how it pushes in what we push into QuickBooks Online? Because we had somebody about, hey, do we send the attachment in? Now for QuickBooks Desktop, you have the option to send an attachment in, but QuickBooks Online, Charlie will show you exactly what we do. I was about to type it out, but it'll make more sense if you show it.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm just going to approve a couple bills and then we can look at it. I didn't even show you the rest of these. I'm sorry, I got blathering on, but here was, some of these examples where, you can read handwriting and you can say, oh, you know what, this isn't even let's do this too, because we'll give you two. So you would look at this and you'd say, okay, first of all, this isn't a bill. This is a receipt. I can see that it was paid on this credit card. So great, all of this is right, but move this to receipts. It was paid, I can see, by the MasterCard credit card, and I'm going to give it reference number 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to approve the receipt. Okay. And then if we go to QuickBooks, the QuickBooks spinning wheel, I can't do anything about, so you're just going to have to bear with that. And we can look at a couple of the bills that we just pushed. All right, so we approved this Belimo bill. And this is the bill record of the bill that we just created. And so first of all, you can see this is the category that we assigned. Here's the description. Because this is an expense, this is getting really wonky, but because this is an expense and in QuickBooks, you lose the quantity information for expenses, which is crazy. We take the expense, the quantity information we append at the beginning of the description. So you can look at this and say, oh, I bought 5 of these things, right? So at least you know. And then we give you a couple things. So first, as a $0 item is our default, but you can also push this to the memo line if you want. We give you a unique link that when you go to this unique link is a copy of the original bill. So it's always going to live with the bill record as a $0 item. And then most people just set up a MakersHub, chart of account where it just goes and you've got some $0 items, or you can say, I don't want that at all. I don't want it there. Put it in the memo field for me, which we can also do. And then we also give you a full audit trail of everything that happened in MakersHub such that this record exists. So it was processed by MakersHub. It was fully approved on this date. It was uploaded by me. It was approved by the processors group. And I was the member of the group that had that, took that action. And yeah, other than that, all of the line item detail is captured here. All of the accounting codes that we've assigned are captured here. So obviously no manual intervention in this, and like a really robust economic record with no added effort from anybody on your side. I can't see the question, so if there's anything else, please.
Well, somebody was asking about like how the line items come in, how it comes in through QuickBooks. You were just talking about how the inventory items, the quantity, because of the way that QBO handles inventory, doesn't really come in. But she said, what about QBD? And then she said, what happens to non-inventory items in QuickBooks Desktop?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So QuickBooks Desktop is actually the much more robust system, and we built the integration first for QuickBooks Desktop, given the nature of the customer set that we often serve and the depth of the inventory functionality in Desktop. So we can walk you through all of those details. I won't go through it with only 9 minutes left here today, but Ted, if you can grab the name, be thrilled to follow up and go through all of the details. All of it has been very thoughtfully considered, and we have tens, hundreds of users who are using the inventory features in QBD on a daily basis. And then this is the, go ahead.
Speaking of this, I would love to take the opportunity to launch our poll, since you're talking about people.
Sorry, yeah, please.
So I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. And if you would like to learn more about MakersHub and have the team reach out to you for a demo and answer specific questions about your clients, answer yes. And then Liz and I will be sending your information over to Ted and Charlie and their team so that they can set that up for you.
Yeah, and this would be most likely, Charlie, with me, correct? Going over any questions that you may have, probably Charlie on there as well.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to join as well. So
somebody else, and it would be really non-salesy, just answering any further questions that you have, and then hopefully getting you set up with your own version so you can try it yourself.
Yeah,
and
we're not going to.
Did I see in the chat Ted, that there's a 90-day trial?
Yeah, I sent that over with the source link. Yes.
So The
Go ahead,
the
Charlie.
90-day trial for our CPA partners, you'll get a CPA account, which comes with this partner portal. Your kind of CPA business account is free once you add managed entities, and from here, you can add your clients. You can connect their QuickBooks directly. You don't need any involvement from us. You can manage their usage. You can move through their associated plans. You can make them the payor. You can make you the payor. We've made it very flexible and designed with CPA firms and all of the different manifestations of how they want to work with our clients in mind.
And Charlie only showed about 1/10 or 1/18 of what the product can actually do.
Yeah, so I can just finish this real quick. So let's say we're going to pay the bills, and we'll get to we're going to schedule these payments. We're going to batch them all by vendor. The vendor experience is very, very advantageous in MakersHub, where in order to add a new vendor, all you need to do is either input their information directly, or you can request that they do it. And when you request, I don't have an email on this, but when you request that they do it, they get an automated and secure email from the system that asks them, how do you want to be paid? Check or ACH. They put in their information, and then that's done. We have a lot of customers who use MakersHub to manage the W-9 process. So you can either upload the forms directly if you have them, or you can request that the vendor submit them. When we request that the vendor submits them, they can either upload a document themselves, or they can, I'll put in my email real quick, they can actually populate it directly here in an IRS compliant way. So it makes it a very kind of powerful tool for making sure that you have tax compliance on hand for all. Yeah, I'm not going to fill all this stuff out, but and then so it's a single click from here to schedule payments. You can select the payment date for whenever you want, and then importantly, when we do this, we don't use any kind of clearing account. So all of this is going to reconcile to your bank feed appropriately. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 transactions, whatever it is. They total $16,900. You are not going to get a $16,900 transaction with MakersHub. You're going to get all 7 of the individual transactions that you did on your bank feed. So that auto match happens appropriately and takes away all of the payment record creation. The payment record that gets created in QuickBooks would incorporate all 4 of these underlying transactions, but would be a single payment because that's what you did. And all of that will reconcile on an automated basis. And then all of this goes into the archive, and the archive is very, very smart in terms of its ability to, be filtered and sorted. You can do all kinds of analytics from this, where you can say, hey, on a monthly basis, I want to look at all the bills that we got from this vendor for, this customer and job that got assigned to this chart of account or whatever, right? And then export that information to Excel and manipulate it in Excel. And then the payment details that are available to you, because we're a fully integrated A to Z system, is we can tell you everything about where a payment stands. And here's a payment that we made by physical check to NASBA for something. And, here was the invoice, who approved that invoice at the time that it was approved, separately, who authorized that payment, that bill approval workflow that I showed you. We have a separate one for authorizing payments. Those are 2 separate questions that are answered by separate people. And then the actual transfers. So there's an ACH debit and then the cutting of a physical check. And as soon as the check gets mailed, copy of the physical check, images of the deposited check here, make it super easy for you to answer the question of the vendor. Hey, I sent you a bill. Where does it stand? Sorry to go through that so quickly.
It's so just incredible. I have a question about the W-9s and the 1099. Is there reporting within MakersHub to do the 1099 reconciliation at the end of the year? Or is that pushed for QuickBooks?
So we push that to QuickBooks, but what we do, and I wish I'd filled this out so I could actually show you what the vendor would get, and I could quickly. What we do is when the vendor fills out the form in MakersHub, the vendor says, I don't have a form. We're ultimately going to read the W-9 and do this for you. Today, it's when the vendor fills out the form. So the vendor says, I don't have one to upload, but I'll fill one out. We pull up a template of the IRS form and they fill it out. And by virtue of what they fill out, MakersHub knows this is or is not someone that you need to track for 1099 purposes. And so I will turn it on for you, or I will not turn it on for you. But in terms of like the actual, okay, now at the end of the year, I'm going to go and like do the actual tax work around this, that we don't touch deliberately. But
that goes over into QuickBooks. So if you're
all the
setting
information, yeah. So like the EIN goes over and it gets marked as somebody that you need to track.
Hey, Charlie, will you do one more thing for me?
Sure.
Will you go into payment? Because this is pretty exciting. Will you go into the payments or accounts payable and show them how to attach a voucher to a payment really quickly?
Sure.
Just on even like on Scott's Electric, you can just go in and take a picture quickly.
So I don't know where Ted is going with this is if I want to schedule the payment and I'm paying by physical check, I can either one, fully control the memo field, so I can put whatever I want in the memo field, or I can say I want to add a support document. And I can't do it in this way, Ted, because I didn't add it at the time that we were reviewing the doc. But if I wanted to add a support document to this, so let's say I'm paying a tax bill or I'm paying a utility bill or something of that nature, I want to add the actual document to it, then I can take a simple screenshot.
You can click on the invoice, can't you, Charlie? Right there on the invoice link.
Yeah, I don't want to go back now.
Okay, to the left, I was going to say.
We can print this. So when we print and mail the check, we can, you can tell us, hey, I want to add a support document to the actual, check that we're being printed so that I can get the appropriate reference. So you can mail support documents with your physical check is where Ted's going with that.
IRS vouchers, all sorts of stuff like that, which you can't do with other AP solutions.
So that was a breakneck tour. There's a ton more stuff that we could talk about and we'd be thrilled to. If anybody wants to learn more, I promise this is not a sales exercise, but happy to share more outside this context.
Well, Liz, you're on mute first. So you're on mute, but I was going to ask you, can you go back to the slide so we can take just a moment to thank our sponsors? We have a slide at the very beginning that we can get to show, and I just want to make sure that we show our gratitude to all of our sponsors of Happy Hour. And then we can tell people about our YouTube channel and thank our amazing guests. Everybody's minds have been blown, Charlie and Ted. So if you look at the chat, everybody's been really, really impressed and excited. So we got quite a few people that are really excited about a demo. So thank you to our sponsors of Happy Hour. These are amazing solutions that make Happy Hour possible and allow Liz and I to bring you the latest in accounting technology. So I just wanted to give a big shout out to them. So thanks, Liz.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And one of the things that I find exciting is the number of videos that we have on YouTube that are all of the different demos that we've done along the years. And MakersHub will soon be part of that collection. So by the end of this week, early next week, this video will be on our YouTube channel and able for you to go and watch and rewatch because it's got so much information in there. And there was a lot of you that said yes, that you want additional information, which is exciting.
Yes, we have 130 videos.
That's a lot.
Anyone who wants follow-up, we'll follow up with them within the next few days.
Great. Thank you so much, Ted.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Liz.
Well, thank you for joining us. And for all of you who are going to be at Bridging the Gap, I can't wait to see you in person. Heather and I will be there. And for those of you who are not going to be there, Heather and I are going to be doing a live broadcast so we can give you the updates at what is happening at the Bridging the Gap conference that's just next week.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Looks like a wonderful lineup. So I'm super excited.
Awesome.
Information.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. Have a wonderful day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.